Hello students, welcome to the lecture on contract of guarantee, and after this lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Define features of contract of guarantee. Explain types of guarantee. Describe bailment and pledge. Explain functions of rights and liabilities of surety and co-surety. Explain contingent contracts and wagering agreements. Let's start with the concept contract of guarantee. A contract of guarantee is a contract to perform the promise or discharge the liability of a third person in case of his fault. The person who gives the guarantee is called the surety. The person in respect of whose default the guarantee is given is called the principal debtor, and the person to whom the guarantee is given is called the creditor. The guarantee may be either oral or written. Person giving guarantee is also called a guarantor. However, Contract Act uses the word surety, which is same as guarantor. Three parties are involved in contract of guarantee. Contract between any two of them is not a contract of guarantee. It may be contract of indemnity. Primary liability is of the principal debtor. Liability of surety is secondary and arises when principal debtor fails to fulfill his commitments. A guarantee is a contract between the guarantor, the person that gives the guarantee, and the creditor, typically the creditor that makes the loan. As a contract, it must meet the essential conditions required to form a valid and enforceable contract. There must be certainty of the terms of the guarantee. What is the extent of the guarantee? When can the creditor call for performance under the guarantee, and how can it be revoked? Let us now discuss the features of contract of guarantee. The characteristics of or essentials of contract of guarantee are: tripartite agreement. In a contract of guarantee, there are three parties, namely principal creditor, creditor and surety. Under this contract, three separate contracts are made among them and consent of all the three parties is necessary. Liability. Under such contract, the primary liability is of the principal debtor and only secondary liability is of the surety. As a conditional contract, liability of the surety arises only when the principal debtor, primarily liable, defaults. Essentials of valid contract. It is also as same as other general contract in respect of essentials. All the requirements for valid contract, that is, free consent, consideration, lawful object, competency of the parties, etc., are necessary to form the kinds of contract. Written form. A contract relating to guarantee must be concluded in writing in Nepal and England, but the legal framework does not compel to form such contract in written form. Both written and oral is valid. Now moving on to the next topic, we will study the types of guarantee. A guarantee may be either specific guarantee or continuing guarantee. Specific guarantee. It is given for single debt or obligation and comes to an end when the debt guaranteed has been paid or obligation guaranteed has been discharged. Thus, where A gives a loan to B for which C stands guarantee, it is a case of a specific guarantee. In this case, there is a specific debt and the guarantee shall come to an end the moment the loan is repaid. A specific guarantee cannot be revoked. Once the guarantee is given, it cannot be withdrawn or revoked, and even after the death of the surety guarantor, it continues to operate, making his legal representatives liable for the same. Continuing guarantee. On the other hand, a continuing guarantee is one where the guarantee given is not for a single or specific debt or obligation, but for a series of debts. Let's know the meaning of bailment. The word bailment is derived from the French word bailer, which means to deliver. Bailment is the delivery of goods by one person to another from some purpose. When the purpose is accomplished, the goods is returned to or otherwise disposed of according to the directions of the person delivering them. Essential elements of bailment. Contract. A bailment is usually created by agreement between the bailer and bailee. Delivery of goods. In bailment, the possession of goods must be delivered by the bailer to the bailee. No transfer of ownership. In bailment, possession is transferred from one person to another, but ownership of goods remains with the bailer. Delivery of goods for some purpose. The delivery of goods must be for some specific performance. Return of specific goods. Goods are delivered to the bailee with the condition that the same goods will be returned to the bailer after the accomplishment of purpose. Movable goods. In bailment, the goods bailed must be movable. Rights and duties of bailer and bailee. Right to demand a return of goods. Any time in case of guaranteous bailment, the bailer can demand back goods bailed at any time, even if he had lended for a specific goods. Period or for a specified purpose. Enforcement of rights. The duties of bailee are the rights of bailer, and bailer can enforce those rights by filing a suit against bailee. Duties of bailer. Duty to disclose unknown defects. A bailer is bound to disclose all the defects relating to goods of which he is known. Duty to bear extraordinary expenses. Where the bailment is guaranteous and the bailee is not to receive any remuneration, the bailer shall pay bailee all the necessary expenses. Bear risk for loss. Bailer is to bear risk of loss or destruction of the thing bailed if the bailee had taken prudent care of the goods. Rights of finder of goods. Right of line. Right of sue of reward. The finder of goods can sue to real owner for the reward, if any, has been offered by the owner of goods. Right to sale, export. The finder of goods generally cannot sell the goods he found, but in following cases he can do so. When true owner of goods cannot be finding after reasonable search, the true owner refuses to pay the lawful charges to finder of goods. When the goods are perishable in nature, where the lawful charges exceeds 2/3 of the value of goods. Duties of finder of goods. To take due care of the goods, to find the true owner must not use the goods of his personal purpose. He should not mix the goods with his own goods. Must return the goods to the real owner if he is found. Bailment of goods as a security for payment of debts or performance of promise is called pledge. The bailer is called pledger or pawner, and the bailee is called pawnee. Pledge is a kind of bailment where the transfer of goods or bailments of goods are made as a security for the payment of debt or performance of a promise. In such case, the person who gives goods as a security is called pledger or pawner, and the person who received the goods as a security is called pledgee or pawnee, bailee. The pledge is bound to return the pledged goods on the fulfillment of his debt or pledger's promise. Thus, the contract by which the possession of goods is transferred as a security is known as pledge. For example, X borrows $50,000 from Y and keeps his gold as a security for the payment of that loan. Essential of pledge. The important essentials of pledge are movable property. The pledge is concerned with the movable property. All types of goods and valuable documents are included in it. Transfer of possession. In case of pledge, only possession of goods transferred by the pawner to the pawnee. Example, Mr. Nelson ledges car with Mr. McCullum and gets $10,000. He gives the possession of car to Mr. McCullum. Ownership right in case of pledge. The ownership of the goods remains with the pawner. It is not transferred to pawnee. Example, Mr. Wali pledges the plot with Mr. Raffle and gets $10 million. The ownership of the plot remains with Mr. Wali. Case of mere custody. Those people who have only mere custody of the goods cannot pledge them. Example, a custodian cannot pledge his master's bungalow. It will be invalid pledge. Limited interest. Pledged property cannot be used for unlimited interest. When a person pledges goods in which he has only limited interest, the pledge is valid to the extent of that interest only. Example, Mr. Nelson gives a car to Mr. Andre for repair but does not pay $500 repair charges. Mr. Andre pledges the car with Mr. Smith and borrows $2,000. This pledge is valid only up to $5,000. Right to receive accretion to the goods. Pledged. Benefit, achievement and incessant. Right to claim compensation against the pledge for any losses he suffers due to negligently handling, mixture and unauthorized use of goods, etc. Right to receive a notice from the pawnee before sale or auction of the goods pledged. Right to sue the pawnee in the court to recover the goods in case sale or auction took place without notice. Duties of pawner or pledger. Pawner has the duty to disclose all the defects in the goods to be pledged. Pledger or pawner has the duty to repay his loan, interest, expenses if any within or at the specified time. Rights and liabilities of surety and co-surety. When we were discussing the contract of indemnity, we discussed the meaning of the contract of indemnity and the essentials of the contract of indemnity, along with the rights of the indemnity holder. Rights of the surety. When we have explained that there are three parties in a contract and there are three contracts. Surety's rights against debtor. The rights of the surety against debtor are, and that first right is the right of subrogation. Now, what is the meaning of the right of subrogation? Right of subrogation says that when a surety makes the payment to the creditor and creditor is out of the scene now, therefore now surety will deal with the debtor in a manner as if he is a creditor. Rights of a surety against creditor. Now moving on to discuss the rights of the surety against creditor, because there is a contract between the creditor and the surety also. So when surety has got a right against the debtor, he has got certain rights against the creditor also. Surety's liability. The first and the foremost point in the surety's liability is that it is coextensive of the debtor's liability. When we say the coextensive of debtor's liability is, it means a surety liability is as much as the debtor's liability. Rights and liabilities of co-sureties. Rights of co-sureties. Contribution. Co-sureties are liable to contribute equally if there is more than one surety in respect of one debt, though contracted on different dates unless contracted otherwise. Equality. Where the sureties are bound in different sum, they are bound to pay equally as far as the limits of their respective obligations permit. Liabilities of co-sureties. Co-sureties are jointly and severally liable. The discharge of one co-surety from his liability does not release the other co-sureties from their liability. Contingent contracts. Insurance contract provide the best example of contingent contracts. The performance of a contingent contract depends upon the happening or non-happening of some future event. Law of contingent contract. According to Section 31 of the Contract Act 1872, a contingent contract is a contract to do or not to do something if some event collateral to such contract does or does not happen. Characteristic of contingent contract. From the above discussion, it follows that there are two essential characteristics of contingent contracts. Quasi contract. There are certain dealings which are not contracts strictly, though the parties act as if there is a contract. Remedies for breach of contract. When a contract is breached by any party of the contract, the other party is entitled to get remedies for this breach by the court. The remedies available for breach of contract are rescission of the contract, ratification of the contract. Rescission of the contract. When one party to a contract breach the other party is entitled to ratification the contract under section 35 to 38 of the Specific Relief Act 1877. Ratification of the contract. When any contractual document is made with fraud or with mutual mistake and which does not express the real intention of the parties, then the affected party to the contract is entitled to the ratification the contract according to their intention under section 31 to 34 of the Specific Relief Act 1877. Wagering agreements. Wagering agreements are nothing but ordinary betting agreements. Thus, A and B mutually agree that if it rains today, A will pay B $100. It does not rain, B will pay A $100, or where C and D enter into agreement that on tossing up a coin, if it falls head upwards, C will pay O, and if it falls tail upwards, D will pay C $50. There is a wagering agreement. A wager can be described as follows. The agreement of gaming and wagering is that one party is to win and the other E upon a future every which at the time C. The contract is of an A in nature, that is to say, if the event turns out one way, A will lose. It will out the other way, he will win. Possibly the most expressive and all-encompassing definition of a was agreement was given by Hawkins. A wagering contract is one by which two persons professing to hold opposite views touching the issue of a future uncertain event mutually agree independent upon the determination of that event. One shall win from the and the other shall pay and hand over to him a sum of money, or rather neither of the contracting parties having any other interest in that contract than the sum of stake he will so win or lose, there being no other real consideration for the making of such contract by either of the parties. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learnt in this lecture. A contract of guarantee is a contract to perform the promise or discharge the liability of a third person in case of his default. A specific guarantee cannot be revoked. Once the guarantee is given, it cannot be withdrawn or revoked, and even after the death of the surety. The word bailment is derived from the French word bailer, which means to deliver. Bailment is the delivery of goods by one person to another from some purpose. Pledge is a kind of bailment where the transfer of goods or bailments of goods are made as a security for the payment of debt or performance of a promise. The rights of the surety against debtor are, and that first right is the right of subrogation. Now, what is the meaning of the right of subrogation? Contingent contract is a contract to do or not to do something if some event collateral to such contract does or does not happen.